One can always learn more. One can always understand more. The question is to provide yourself with confidence, with eagerness, with enthusiasm.
Paris. For 75 years, a single apartment on a street in a quarter called Montmartre was the object of a pilgrimage unique in the history of music. For us, musicians in search of learning, the passage both began and ended here. This was our journey towards instruction. A subway station, a walk along a leafy square, and finally, a few paces more down to the Rue Balou. We all took the same steps, different personalities from all over the globe, linked only by our love of music. Some of us paused en route to rally our spirits and strength under the statue of Hector Berlioz. For Mademoiselle was an exacting teacher. She asked of each of us to have the courage to pursue, to become a composer, a performer, or even a teacher. What could one woman possess to inspire and develop such motivation? And what was it like to be a pupil of Nadia Boulanger?
She didn't allow me to make mistakes. And when I did, she accused me of being lazy, of being inattentive, of being distracted, of not caring about my music. And this was just for one tiny mistake.
I had an extraordinary feeling of great maternal warmth. And her voice, which was a vibrant, a baritone kind of voice, not unlike Greta Garbo's, fascinated me.
I don't know how a human being can say, I will never write another note in my life. How can you say that? She did. It shows how strong she was.
She really should have been a composer because she had such a sensitive reaction to to whatever was presented to her.
She asked everything of you. To one of the students, she said, with every note that you write, with every note that you play, you must put your whole life into it. It was this extraordinary dedication, which of course drew the thousands that came under her influence.
Write it as you want, you play it as you want, I love it as I want. I adore teaching. I have such a pleasure to be before somebody I try to discover. I try to find his ultimate qualities and usually find that there is one place where perhaps not to become a good musician, but to become a man. There is a power in this man. And this discovery of the personality is for me an expression of respect, of love, of understanding, very meaningful. When you have to deal with a young musician, it's essential to expose him to work quite different. What else will you play me? If somebody would say, I don't care if I write good or bad music, I have to write. I say, you must write, It may be that the time being, or our understanding opening better, we will understand better. When I have a new pupil, I say, who are you? Who are you as a man, the young man who comes to ask you advice? It is so serious a situation to hear him play and suddenly decide that he is right or wrong when you are not sure yourself. It's difficult. Will he have the character strong enough to stand his superb, unbelievable gift? I'm not sure. Will he have this indomitable courage to pursue?
Nadia Boulanger was born on September 16, 1887. From a few streets away, the din of the boulevard reaches the quiet apartment on the Rue Maubeuge. Shouts and horses' hooves on cobblestone. In nearby Montmartre, innovative painters capture demi-mondaine in dazzling colors, while others prowl cabarets with names like Purgatory and Hell. Locomotives roar into the city, linking Paris with distant events and new ideas. Yet, the means of cleaning the city's streets has not changed for 500 years. History and art, on the brink of a strange and awesome age, cannot quite shake off the demands of the past. For Nadia Boulanger, the past is even closer. Through only 2 generations, her family of composers and performers takes her back to a far more distant time. Nadia's grandmother, Julie, born in 1786, studied voice from a man who had performed before Marie Antoinette. Beauty, acting ability, and a sweet voice made Julie a popular star at the Opera Comique. She sang before Louis XVIII. Like his father before him, Julie's husband, Frédéric Boulanger, was a king's musician and a teacher at the Royal Conservatory. In 1815, the year Napoleon fought at Waterloo, their only child was born. Ernest Boulanger became an operattist, a choral composer, and a teacher of voice at the conservatory. His life spanned 2 empires, 3 monarchies, and all the turbulence of 19th century France. At the age of 61, Ernest Boulanger married a 20-year-old boy student. She lived in a time when women rarely ventured out of doors unaccompanied. Yet, Raisa Micheskaya left the comfort of her middle-class home in St. Petersburg and traveled alone to Paris.
My mother, who was an immense gift for music, was an amateur. As she saw that music was a passion in my life, she wanted also my passion to work, to learn more technique, to perfect what I could. She never asked me more than what I could. She wanted to know only if I've done all my best. On that, she was very, very, I would say, severe. Severe in a severity which represented an endless tenderness.
Nadia is raised like a tiny adult, an elderly father, a demanding mother who will share room with her for the next 50 years. Her sister Lily is born in 1893. The life of the family revolves around music.
I could not stand one note of music. It was a feeling of distress, of horror, of revolt. I could not. Until 5, I was in agony for my poor parents. And then suddenly I went at the piano because I had heard the fireman in the street. So suddenly, music was everything for me. I did everything to especially discover. I could weep today the same tears that I wept, not because it was sad, because it was so essentially beautiful.
Holy Saturday, 1900. Nadia's father dies. She inherits from him the financial burden not only for her mother, but for her 7-year-old sister, Lily. By 13, Nadia has 6 years of experience at the musical conservatory. Her mother accompanies her to classes every day. By 17, she tutors older students to increase the family income. In addition, there are the demands of her classes and of her compositions. Her teachers include Raoul Pugnol and a friend of her father's, Gabriel Fauré. It is an exciting time at the French Conservatory. The names of students and teachers include Maurice Ravel and Claude Debussy. In 1903, Nadia wins all top prizes in the conservatory final examinations. 1 year later, she wins 2nd place in France's most important artistic competition, the Grand Prix de Rome. She is 20 years old, gifted, diligent, ambitious. All signs indicate her promise of becoming a great composer. The gift of composition has passed as well to Lily. Aware, perhaps, of the fragility of her health, sensing her lack of time, Lily rushes through works with startling precocity. Her first work is finished by 6, and opera is completed by 13. Her works are devout musical meditations, clear, high, hopeful voices with undertones of impending darkness. At the age of 19, Lily Boulanger becomes the first woman to win the Grand Prix de Rome. The victory is short-lived. On March 15, 1918, a date Nadia will venerate all her life, Lily dies of pneumonia. Shortly thereafter, Nadia abandons composition forever.
When I was young, she said to me, I was a composer and I was working and you know, making a lot of work, a lot of composition. And I realized someday, in spite of all of my friends were selling about my work, meaning that all her friends were saying that it was very good, great work and everything, she said to me, one day I realized that what I was writing was not good enough. And since that day, I quit composing and I decided to dedicate my whole life to other composers, which is an extraordinary decision.
Nadia Boulanger had learned as a young woman how to write music, and she thought that every musician should know how to write music, but that didn't mean that they had to do it. You write music because you're impelled by an inner need. You don't write music simply because you know how. You write it enough to prove that your instruction was okay, and you can write things that can be played and even listened to. By the time Nadia Boulanger was 30, she had found out that she was a perfectly competent composer, but not an enormously gifted one, and she didn't really need to write music, besides which her younger sister was a genius for writing music, and she saw no reason for continuing it herself.
It's not altogether true that Mademoiselle Boulanger did not compose. As a matter of fact, she had written music in collaboration with Raoul Puno. I believe it was music for one of the Maeterlinck dramas. Perhaps it was Sister Beatrice, I think. And often, when I asked her about that, she said, "Oh, my dear, it's not worth really talking about. You know, the real talent in our family was, of course, my sister Lily."
I had no talent as composer. I wrote only what I called useless music. Not bad. It was well written, it's clean, but it represents nothing. And when I realized that myself, I said, well, perhaps it's pride, but I don't want to produce this kind of music. And I gave up because I was unable. That was the giving up of composition. But then the choice of teaching was that when you are studying, you are first the one who knows nothing, then the one who knows a little bit. And when you know a little bit more, you have always somebody to whom to transmit it. And that is the beginning of teaching. When you teach really, for me it is a great work, very difficult, very doubtful, because I do my best. I dream that I will understand the pupils. You cannot be a teacher if you have not a need of comprehension, the need of understanding, the love for the personality of the other. He is a human being, and you can help him in one way or another. And that is, in you, a fascination. It makes it, for me, a great event. He has understood.
In 1924, Nadia takes the place of Gabriel Fauré as chief organist at the Church of La Madeleine. When female instructors are nearly unknown in French schools of music, she begins to teach at l'École Normale. Eventually, she will be the first woman permitted to teach composition at a French conservatory. 3 years earlier, the French government had dedicated the Palace of Fontainebleau as an American Conservatory of Music. She joins its faculty as a teacher of harmony. The first wave of American students includes Melville Smith, Elliott Carter, Roy Harris, and Roger Sessions. But it is the very first American to enroll whose name she shall never forget.
If I remember Copland, but since I know him, which dates from 1921, I have never passed 1 year without to have corresponded with him, read of his music, heard of his music. He is part of my personal daily activity.
I began by going to a 2-month summer school established by the French government for American students in the Palace of Fontainebleau. I was told by fellow students that there was a very good teacher of harmony at the school, and that I really ought to go and visit her class. I said, I'm not interested in harmony. I've had 3 years of harmony. I'm done with it. They said, no, just go and see the way she does it. So I allowed myself to be persuaded, and there was something about the way in which she was talking about harmony, the warmth with which she was talking about the subject, which made it seem like the very basis of what music is all about. I'd always thought of it in terms of rather dull harmony, and suddenly this is what Beethoven's Ninth Symphony was established on. It was a series of harmonic relations. And very gradually I began to think I would like to study with that woman. And I hesitated, because I couldn't think in the whole history of music of any famous composer who had studied with a lady teacher. And I thought, gee, am I going to be the first? But I talked myself into it. It was the smartest thing I ever did.
For us, the first student was Aaron Copland. This young, bright, rapid youngster, so original and so profoundly musical. And with him, as with the musician of the time, is more through the music that I came to love so profoundly Copland, that no Copland and loved his music. Music determined the relation.
(1924). Asked to choose a piece for her debut with the New York and Boston symphonies, Nadia Boulanger persuades the unknown Aaron Copland to compose his symphony for organ and orchestra. The performance is the commencement of a successful American concert and lecture tour. Spread by alumni of the Boulangerie, such as Thomson, Walter Piston, Herbert Elwell, and Copland, her reputation has already crossed the Atlantic. After conducting Copland's symphony, Walter Damrosch announces, if a 24-year-old can write music like that, in 5 years he'll be able to commit murder.
When I first knew Nadia, we're back in 1921. I was 25 years old and she was just 34. She was a good-looking woman without being in any way vain about it. With only 9 years difference in our ages, both of us already grown, neither of us adolescent anymore, we understood each other as man to woman without there ever being the slightest semblance of a flirtation. At the same time, we were aware of each other, and we liked it that way. She didn't have to treat me as a child, and I didn't have to treat her as a middle-aged school teacher. Of course, my life as a man was only barely begun, whereas there was every reason to believe that her life as a woman was over, and she considered it to be over. There she is at 34. She was a consecrated pedagogue in a way that I've practically never seen otherwise elsewhere, because she would make lesson appointments at 7 o'clock in the morning. She would make them for 10 o'clock at night. The teaching was a compulsion, and she never seemed to mind it. In all the years that I knew her, of course, which were over 50, I never saw her behave or seem to think toward her profession as if the practice of it were anything but a privilege.
Paris, between the wars, is the artistic center of a turbulent world. From Picasso to Joyce, from Cocteau to Honegger, the artists that walk these streets are daily breaking new ground. Nadia's apartment on the Rue Ballou is one of the centers of this cultural life. Eric Satie and Gertrude Stein live here in Montmartre, only a few blocks away. Paul Valéry and André Gide are frequent guests. Nadia is busy with private and conservatory classes. There are performances organized to launch a protege's career, a revival of Monteverde's music, and of course the daily masses. Through it all, she maintains her Wednesday afternoon teas to bring together students, friends, and colleagues. No one is more important to Mademoiselle than Igor Stravinsky. Their relationship begins in 1935, when they share a teaching post at the French Conservatory. 3 years later, she journeys to America to conduct the first performance of his Dunbarton Oaks Concerto.
We felt all so small before Stravinsky, and before Beethoven, and before Bach, and before Monteverdi. We cannot understand how the privilege is given to us to understand much more than we are, because I am not Stravinsky, I am not Monteverdi, I am not Bach, and I think, to a certain extent, I understand them. I was amazed to feel such an originality, such a natural way to express oneself. We enter in the world of revelation. Many people have refused Christ, and so they refuse Stravinsky. It's quite normal. They refuse Monteverdi, they refuse Beethoven, they refuse. First, superiority either frightens or discourages people. I don't know, it takes time that people can admit such a greatness which dominates a whole period. I don't know, it's too frightening and too extraordinary. We enter in full mystery suddenly.
Every time Stravinsky finished a composition, before to send it to anyone, he sent a photocopy to Nadia Boulanger in Paris. So as soon as she received a Stravinsky composition, she brought it to class, and we spoke about it, and we read it, and we worked on it, and for weeks and weeks and months we really worked on that. When she wanted to explain something, she had such an extraordinary knowledge that she could give us examples in any possible situation, any possible, even in tiny little detail. So she never scratched nor changed any note on the thing that we were composing, but she explained everything through other people's work.
She had an absolutely phenomenal memory. It seemed as though everything that she had ever read in the way of music, and a great deal more besides, had remained permanently in her head. She never spoke about anything that she didn't immediately produce it on the piano as an illustration.
Part of her technique was to to almost personify the standards of music that she was trying to bring her students to. So that it was quite a trick in a way, because she, in her own person, she tried to be to set that kind of standard in a way. And I think it was, what was so intimidating, or could be about it, was that it would be as if all the rigor and grace and style of a Mozart quartet could somehow resolve itself into a personality, or could become that way, and that she would embody it. And so when she talked about a Mozart concerto or something or other, she got so identified with it in a certain way that that for the student you felt that in a way you were in touch with the composer.
1940. A few days before the Germans take Paris, Nadia joins the thousands of refugees fleeing south. Making her way to Lisbon, she finds a passage across an ocean already patrolled by Nazi U-boats to her wartime exile in America. These are busy years. There are benefit performances to aid the war effort and the European refugees. Maintaining the same schedule of 10-hour days she will keep throughout her life, Nadia Boulanger crosses the country, eventually teaching at every major university and school of music from Boston to Los Angeles.
The years in America during the war are very difficult to describe. I felt ashamed not to be in this terrible struggle, a situation horribly dramatic, and I was treated as one of the family, and if I could feel that I belonged to a country which is not France or Russia, my mother was Russia, I would say I feel I'm home, because the welcome I have received everywhere, the friendship which has lasted for all this year, is an immense depth and an immense joy.
On either side of the Atlantic, her accomplishments as conductor, performer, and pedagogue are frequently hailed as firsts for any woman. When a reporter asked her what it feels like to be the first woman to conduct the Boston Symphony, Nadia Boulanger replies, "I've been a woman for 50 years. I've gotten over my initial astonishment."
But my dear, you ask me questions that I would feel so intelligent if I could answer. I know that the difference is very great, because the reaction of a woman is another reaction than a man. But I never heard that Marie Curie was disturbed in any way to be the great woman she was. It was hard to succeed in anything for anyone. That is, I'm sure, for a man, is terribly difficult to succeed. and for a woman too. But it's not a question of being a woman, it's a question of having the talent. My dear, you ask me question I never thought. When I do music, I never wonder, is it a woman, is it a man? I hear it's good, it's beautiful, and there's quite a secondary question, is it a woman, is it? When Kathleen Ferrier sings, I know she is a genius. When Richter plays, I know he is a genius. But will Richter be a woman? It would change nothing to the story. Simply it is Richter, and it is Kathleen Ferrier, and that is unique.
You know, we can discount Schubert and Mozart, and there are people that lived hundreds of years ago and say, oh, well, they were geniuses and they weren't quite real. Then you have this living person who has embodied that work, and so in her understanding of it, and has almost taken it on in a certain way. And then you can no longer say it's not achievable. And she tells you it's achievable.
There was one aspect of Mademoiselle that really interested me, and I didn't know quite how to take the whole thing apart, and those were the little intolerances. I say little because they were big ones. And I can remember as early as 1936 talking about Eric Satie, and she had small appreciation for his music. And these intolerances went right through to the Bartók Quartet. She did not like Bartók's music at that time. At any rate, I brought up the music of Arnold Schoenberg, particularly the music dodecaphonique. And she said, absolutely, I don't want to hear anything about it. You know, it bothers me that our dear Igor has now become interested in that. And there was nothing that could convince her that Arnold Schoenberg's music was to be taken very seriously or even considered. She had a way of wiping her hands, and you just simply got wiped out with it.
One knows very well what great, for the good and for the bad, has been this influence, the whole Viennese school, with great difference between each of them. I recognize this influence, I recognize this very important intelligence and this desperate research to renew the language, but you have never traditional or modern music. What is modern today is already old, because there is no present. When I say now, now is already gone.
Very often she liked to invite one or two or three of us for dinner on Sunday night. It was a sort of custom. And I had the opportunity to meet some extraordinary people around her. And for a boy of 14 or 15 years old, it's really a sort of, would I say, boring kind of thing, because we couldn't move, we couldn't talk, we couldn't do anything. So after a couple of hours being seated at dinner, we had to explode one way or another. And I ran into her piano and I was playing some jazz music, knowing that Nadia Boulanger hated jazz music. And when I was very young, I loved it very, very much already. And I can picture myself like a revenge.
But there are good jazz, and good jazz is excellent. There is very much bad jazz. Jazz is bad music, is bad of everything. To find a good cook, you have great trouble. To have a good gardener, you have great trouble. To have a good anything, you have all the painting entry in the museum. It's terrible.
Any jazz person who was coming to Nadia Boulanger didn't come to learn jazz. She never taught jazz. She didn't understand it and she didn't like it. She really hated it. She said, how can you play some music just with 3 chords? You know, I mean, it's poor, it's stop. No discussion.
Well, you know, all what counts for us is mystery. I don't know why I love music. I don't know what music is. Genius, I don't even speak of it. We are as fools. We say, he's a genius. We want to say that he attains something which is at the highest point of sensation, feeling, belief, knowledge, attachment. It's a very important thing, and it's why when you are teaching, you are very concerned. Have I not encouraged too many people? That's the only thing you fear. So when I see a young pupil, my first question is, can you live without music? If you can live without music, thank the Lord and goodbye. Because it's only if it is unavoidable that you must do music. But you can never love music with enough devotion. If not, you make a mistake. You engage your life in marrying somebody that you don't love. It's not a good idea, I think. I don't know, I've never been married. But somebody who wants to do it will never be discouraged. I will discourage him, but she will go in the street alone to somebody else, but she will do it. The one that you must push will never do anything. Obstinate repetition on FD, which I would play with a little. I would not make the diminuendo so slow, so soon. Play from Paris. Yeah, yeah. Not the scale, forte.
Only the chords.
Pareil. No, pareil.
Yes, but
Keep the theme and break the...
she demanded absolute perfection in obeying all the regulations when it came to harmony exercises and fugue and counterpoint. But when it came to writing your own music, that was yours to do as you saw it. She would give her reaction to it, but never in any way impose it upon you. And her reaction was absolutely astonishing. She always found the weak spot that you knew was weak.
I don't think I could point to any particular thing in my music that which would make me say, well, that obviously was the influence of Nadia Boulanger. She was very good in that way. She didn't attempt to impose her personality and her musical tastes on the student. She rather tried to see what the student was trying to say and express, and to bring that thing out better than was there, if she thought there was a better way of expressing that thing. She didn't have a musical personality of her own like a proper composer would have, which might have influenced you. But she did have an extraordinarily broad musical background to draw upon in when she judged the music of a young and aspiring composer.
I had studied with her. One of the things I got from her was a confidence in my own technique. And you got that from going through hours and hours of writing counterpoint and singing counterpoint and studying music. During the period I studied with her, I would get up well before 7 and it was still dark outside, and I worked 5 or 6 hours a day on counterpoint. I mean, that's what I did. It was incredible. But it was the only way to, she set certain standards that she wanted. She had certain things that she wanted you to do. It didn't occur to me till afterwards that what she was asking me was totally unreasonable. During the period I studied with her, my music went through a very big change. I had come as a composer who had studied really the American tradition of, well, it was Copland and William Schumann and Elliott Carter, really people that was really part of the school of music that she had kind of fostered in a way. But that was the music that I had come from. And it was during the period that I was with her that I changed my music very radically and began to write in the kind of repetitive minimalist style that I'm known for now. And by the way, I didn't show her that music. I never showed her the new music I did. Well, I was actually afraid to tell you the truth.
One can always learn more, one can always understand more, one can always see more. The question is to always provide yourself with confidence, with eagerness, with enthusiasm.
In 1966, Nadia journeys to Russia, her mother's homeland, to judge the Tchaikovsky competition. It is nearly 10 years since her mandatory retirement from the French Conservatory. Yet she will direct the American Conservatory and teach at l'École Normale and the Rue Ballou for over a decade more. In her 80s, she writes musical criticism and conducts orchestras throughout Europe. She judges major international musical compositions and promotes the compositions of Lily. She holds classes at American universities and for British television. She helps with the founding of the Yehudi Menuhin School of Music while continuing to teach new waves of musicians, many of them now from Eastern Europe or Asia. Still leading an active social life, Nadia Boulanger is the guest of honor at ceremonies and parties organized by friends, former students, and colleagues. She has granted countless awards, honorary degrees from Harvard and Yale, the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire, and the French Légion d'honneur, among others. When the ceremonies end, she returns to the work she has done nearly every day throughout her life. To her very last days, Mademoiselle will be what she has always been, a teacher.
Subdominant, the tonic. Pardon. You have touched this. Oh no, oh, that I can give talent, I can take away talent, I can give means to express yourself, but what you have to say comes from you. When I have a pupil unexpectedly gifted. It is a profoundly troubling mystery. You are afraid of each word you say because what you want is to know this originality. You are before something unique which understands everything, thinks everything, parent to everything, struggle with everything. Well, you know that you attend something which I'm obliged to call miraculous. I believe in miracles in general. I don't expect them, I don't claim them. I hope, I don't know how to say it. You know, it seems to be easy to accept this conception on account on the demonstration of the greatness of God. So as I accept God, I feel God, I believe in God, I can believe in a masterpiece, which is only a light in the night, but a sporadic light. It is a moment of eternity capped. I don't know. I ought to be a great philosopher, which I'm not, a great writer, which I'm not, a great poet, which I'm not. Bergson writes somewhere, man is placed before chaos, and he has to a certain point the power to organize this chaos. The philosophers who have discussed this question have not insisted enough to say that nature gives us a sign when destination is reached, and this sign is joy.